How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're starting Daf Chof, Daf 20 of Masechta Kiddushin. Friends, what time is it? It's 6. I think Shabbos is like 6:45. I think we should hopefully have enough time to record before Shabbos. The only thing is the end of this daf, it requires a little bit more braining than I think my brain brains, if you know what I'm saying. But that's at the very end. Yeah, well, it's basically Chaf Aleph Mud Aleph, honestly, where it starts out-braining my brain. So that leaves us a whole daf that we could brain. Alright, so what are we talking about even? Eved Ivris. But yeah, some interesting questions. Whatever, let's just do it. Eved Ivris. Okay, we're going to start in daf Chaf Mud Aleph, about 15 lines or so into the Amud, at the 2 dots. Tana Rabbanan, you got it? Good. The rabbis taught, Im begapo yavo begapo yetze. Oh, so it says by an Eved Ifri that if he comes bigapo, so he leaves bigapo. So begufo nichnos, begufo yetze, period. So the Tanakama explains bigapo yavo begapo yetze, meaning begufo nichnos, begufo yetze. Okay? Comes with his body, leaves with his body. Oh, by the way, Chaver, it's 6 o'clock, which means there is a strong likelihood that the sun will be coming right through that window, right in my face. Within the next few minutes, it'll probably stay for like a while. So I'm probably going to have to turn around and face the door again. And hopefully my microphone's been doing better. I think maybe I had to restart the phone. That's good to know. But anyways, when the microphone doesn't work, it's schwer. Okay, where am I? So that was, okay, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Yechidi nichnos, Yechidi yetze. If he comes in alone, so he leaves alone. My begufo nichnos, begufo yetze. What does it mean that if he comes with his body, he leaves with his body? So Omer Rava lomar she'enu yotze b'rosh eivarim ke'eved. So Rava says what it means is that he doesn't, go free if like his finger gets popped off. Like an Eved Knaini, if his finger gets popped off, or I think his nose gets popped off, or some other things get popped off. So then he goes free. And Rav is saying that no, I guess even if a finger gets popped off, he leaves with his body. I don't really understand how that you learn that from there, but if he comes with his body, he leaves with his body. I guess whatever body he has at the time of leaving. Okay. But he doesn't leave before then, even if a finger gets popped off. 1 second. It says Abai, we learn that out from the pasuk of Lo Seitze K'tzei Avodim, that an Amo Ivria does not go free like the Avodim Knainim go free if fingers get popped off, or one of the 24, I think there are 24 items that if they get popped off, an Eved Knaini goes free. So it says Abai, we learn out from Lo Seitze K'tzei Avodim. So Imei Hasam, so Rava answers, look, if we only had Lo Seitze K'tzei Avodim, so I might think, look, Hava Amino, Neisiv Leidmei, Eine V'nipuk Komajmalan. I might have thought from Lo Seitze K'tzei Avodim, it means that an Eved Knaini, if a finger gets popped off, so he goes free, but he doesn't get payment for the finger, he just goes free. But maybe I might think that, unlike that, in Eved Ivri, if his finger gets popped off, he goes free and he gets payment for it. So therefore we have Bigapo Yov, Bigapo Yetze to say that no, he does not go free when a finger gets popped off, period. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Yechidi nichnos, Yechidi yetze. If he comes alone, he leaves alone. Ma Yechidi yetze, what does it mean he leaves alone? Omer Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Hochi ka'omar, Yesh lo isha uvonim, Rabbo Moselo shifcha kanainis. Ein lo isha uvonim, ein Rabbo Moselo shifcha kanainis. Look, if he comes single, he leaves single. That means that if he comes single, he leaves single. That's quite simple. But if he comes already married, so then his Adon can give him a Shifcha Kanainis to have babies with for the Adon. Okay? Now, this next bit is going to go on for till like Amud Beis, this next bit is going to take us. I'm in like an awkward position. I'm just waiting for the sun to like come in and just rock me. But in the meantime, we're going to have some fun. Truth is, this next part actually isn't that complicated, I don't think. Nimkar bimano Well, actually, that's not true. This next bit, you have to use your brain a little bit. But friends, this is nothing like how you're going to have to use your brains at the end. The way you're going to have to use your brains at the end, I think it's just to do stuff that brains aren't meant to do. Like, you just have to hold too much. You know how, there you go. Friends, you know how I've been saying the past few days that like, Kal v'chomer is like, they're very demanding on the performance of your brain. Oh gosh, I gotta scratch everything on my face and stuff. Kal v'chomers are very demanding on the performance of your brain because like you have to like hold a lot in your brain. You have to remember what's the kal, what's the chomer, and then if you try to switch it around, but maybe that doesn't make sense, but you can ask this kasha. The whole time you have to like hold that, like you have to reserve space in your head for like all of that logic, and you can't release it until it's done. You know, it doesn't get garbage collected until after. So that's basically what we're going to encounter at the end of the daf today, just so you can look forward to it. There's going to be so many sort of twists and turns in this Kal v'chomer, and the whole time you like have to keep it in mind. Like, I don't think that your brain is meant to like hold so much in it. Like, it probably is if it's in the Gemara. I'm sure that there are people that can do it, and I'm sure I can do it if I spent enough time doing it, but I guess I didn't. But it's because it's freaking hard. Weiter. Taner Rabbanan. Nimkar b'mana v'ishbiach. So if if you have an eved who is sold, even if I would get it, you wouldn't get it. I'm just saying it's so complicated that like, it's not the kind of thing that like, this I can explain to you, okay? Nimkar b'mana v'ishbiach, okay, v'nevama b'masayim, okay, when you sold him he was worth 100, then it became worth 200, and okay, I can explain these things, you can get it. Holding friggin' a mountain of logic in your head and not forgetting where it started, I mean, that's on you, friends. I mean, I can't give you like Albert Einstein's brain, you know? Yeah, I said Albert Einstein. Taner Rabbanan. Nimkar b'mana v'ishbiach ve'omer al masayim. So if a Eved was sold for $100, and then he appreciated in value, ve'omer al masayim, and now he's worth $200. He was worth $100, now he's worth $200. Minayin she'ein mechashvin lo elo mana. So how do we know that, you know, if he wants to now redeem himself, so it's the lower price. Redeem yourself for 100 mana, for $100. Shenemar, as the Apostle says, mikesef miknoso, from the money of his sale. And since at the time that he was sold, it was 100, even though he's appreciated in value to 200, if he wants to buy himself back, buy yourself back for 100, the lower price. Nimkar b'masayim v'yichzif v'amar al mana. If he was sold for 200, but then he depreciated in value, and now he's worth 100, and he wants to buy himself back, so again, go for the lower value. How do we know that he can buy himself back for $100, not $200? Again, not again, but Talmud Omar kfi shana, that he redeems himself based on where he's at, you know, during the years. That's how I understand it. Like, not at the time of the sale, but during the time of the years of service. And right now, in the years of service, he's worth 100, so he can buy himself back for 100. Now, this was in the context of an Eved that was sold to an Ovid Kochovim. That since there's, the Torah says that the relatives of the Eved can buy him back even against the will of the Ovid Kochovim. Again, it's referring to an Ovid Kochovim who's willing to, you know, live by the rules of halacha. So, since there's halacha that against the wishes of the Ovid Kochovim, his relatives can redeem him. So yadu ala tachtona. So the Ovid Kochovim in this case has the lower, you know, has less leverage, and therefore I understand by in Eved Ivri who sold to an Ovid Kochovim why the redemption price would be the lower amount. Nimkol Yisrael minayin. How do we know that this applies oichet to a Eved Ivri who sold to a Yid? Talmud Omer Sachir l'Gzeir Shava. Well, we have the Gzeir Shava. Sachir. That it says Sachir by an Eved Ivri sold to a Yid. It says Sachir by an Eved Ivri sold to an Ovid Kochovim. Just like by an Ovid Kochovim, it's the lower price. So Oichet when sold to a Yid, it's Oichet the lower price. Omer Abai, Areni Kiben Azai, Mishuk Itveri. We've seen this before. I think we've seen it before with Rava saying that, but basically it's ask me anything. You ever heard of this Indian? Ask me anything? It means you can ask a fellow anything. So, Abai says, Omer Abai Ot Gezok, I'm like Ben Azai in the marketplaces of Tveria, that Ben Azai was such a genius. What does Rashi say? When Abai was feeling gewaldig, he would say like this, I'm open and ready to respond to my askers, like Ben Azai Darbe Tveria, who lived in Tveria, Chariv v'darshin. It was Chariv and a darshan. Okay, so I guess like Ben Azai that would, teach halachis in Tveria, says Abaye, ask me anything. So one of the rabbis says to Abaye, Michdei, let's see. Hane kroi, ikele medrashinu l'kulav, ikele medrashinu l'chumer. Look, these psukim that we just quoted, right? Mikesef miknoso, kifi shanov. You could learn them to be lenient, and you can learn them to be stringent. Right? You can learn them to be lenient to say Mikesef Miknaso, that if he was sold for 100, now he's worth 200, go for the lower price at the time of the sale. Or Kifi Shanov, that if he was sold for 200, but now he's depreciated to 100, so do it based on now, and again, it's the lower price, so that would be the lenient way. And of course, the stringent way would be to say Fakert. If he sold for 200 and now he's worth 100, go for the time of the sale. Or if he's sold for 100, now he's worth 200, go for the time that he's worth, what he's worth now, which is more expensive. So you can go either way, right? You can be lenient, you can be stringent. The sun, I think, is starting to make its entrance. So my chaz is the darshinu lekula nidrashinu lechomer. So how come the decision to be lenient and say 100 rather than stringent to say 200? Lo salka daitech. And to which Abaye says, that's not, no, we're not going to be stringent because because the Torah is generally lenient, has a lenient attitude vis-a-vis an Eved Ivri. The Tanya is within the Brisa, Kitov lo imach. By a doorman, he wants to extend his stint as an Eved Ivri. Kitov lo imach. It's a good gig. Free room and board. He's with you with food, he's with you with drinks. It can't be a situation where you're eating, high quality bread and he's eating sort of basic bread. You're drinking, old wine that's been preserved properly, and he's drinking new wine, which is less quality. You're sleeping on a good geshmake bed, and he's sleeping on straw. Mikan Omru, from here they said, Kol hakone Eved Ivri, ki kone odin la'atzmo. A fellow who buys for himself an Eved Ivri, it's like he bought for himself an odin la'atzmo, his own master. And now he's got this other person who, whatever he does, this guy needs to do too, on the same level. So therefore, because we have this attitude towards an Eved Ivri, that, we really take care of him, so therefore it makes sense to give him the advantage in being able to redeem himself for less. But maybe I'll suggest that, look, when it comes, oh man, the sun is starting to come through. Alright, sideways time. Okay, keep an eye on the microphone, make sure I don't miss anything up. Here I am, staring at the door. Alright, here we go, sitting sideways. Okay, door. Listen up. Pay attention. Okay. Oh, so maybe I'll say that taka when we're lenient by an Eved Ivri, that's dafka when it comes to eating and drinking, right? So that you shouldn't have tsar, right? If you're sitting there eating geshmaka stuff and he's eating, rice and lentils. I'm joking. I eat rice and lentils. Whatever. You're eating geshmaka stuff. He's eating not so geshmaka stuff. So then, that's degrading. It's not, it's no good. Hal Indian pigeon, but in terms of if he wants to go free and buy him, and redeem himself, nachmir ale, we should be stringent in that case. Based on Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina, the Tanya Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina, says Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina, bo re'ei, kamakashe avko shel shvius. Come and see how stringent and how severe, how significant. Even, what does Rashi say? Avko shel shvius, iser akal sheba, like sort of not so more lenient, more less grave isurim of shvius, of shmita. Adam nosiv and nosim b'peir shvius. For example, a person simply, he does business with shmita fruits. Oh, they're singing again. We must be getting close to Shabbos. The sun's in my face. The singing is going on. So you have a fellow he sells some fruits of Shvius. That's all he does. The sof mochers metatalev. Look what's going to happen in the end. He's going to have to sell some movable objects. Shneimar Zebad says b'shnas hayovel, during the Jubilee year, which also it's Shemitah, right? Yovel is also a Shemitah year. Tashuvu ishelach, who's also fellow returns to his inheritance. V'samachlei, and then it says v'chisimkru mimkar la'misecha konam yada misecha. The v'chisimkru, that if you do business with the parish shvius, so you're going to end up selling, right? Davar nikne miyad liyad mitaltalin, things that are transferred from one hand to the next. So, if you do business with parish shvius, you'll end up having to sell metaltalin. Lo hirgish, and if you don't take heed, l'sof mocher sadosa. So in the end, you're going to end up selling your fields, not just movable objects, but fields as well. Shneimar, as the puzzle says, ki yamuch achicha, right? Meaning we're going to be quoting like one pasuk after the next, right? One pasuk that comes later than the next. So it says then after that, ki yamuch achicha u'macher me'u chuzasu, that if a fellow becomes poor and he has to sell his property, lo bas liyado ad shemocher es beso, then you're going to have to end up selling your house. Shenemar, as the Bible says, ki yimkor beis Moshe of Yerchoma, that if a fellow sells his house in a walled city, mashna osam damer lo hirgish, mashna acha damer lo bas liyado. Now, how come the first time when it talked about selling his field, it said that if he doesn't take heed, he's going to end up selling his field, but over here it says, and then he's going to end up selling his house. How come we took for granted he's going to end up selling his house? The first time we said, if he doesn't pay attention, he's going to have to sell his field. Now all of a sudden it's not like, and if he still doesn't pay attention, no, it says, and now he's definitely going to sell his house. How come we're so sure? Kedar Rafuna, it's like Rafuna Dam Rafuna, says Rafuna, Kevin Sha'avar Adam, Aver Vishanaba, Hutralo, that when a fellow does an Aver one time, and he does it Nachamo, then it's permitted him. Hutralo, what do you mean it's permitted him? Salkadaitech, Ella, nicest locator, it becomes as though it's permitted, right? Meaning he gets used to doing an Aver, the first time it's a big deal. He does it a second time, already, he's on an Avera roll, and therefore, sure. So the first time he says, if you don't pay attention, you're going to end up selling your field. And at that point, if he still keeps on not paying attention, he's just going to devolve into selling his house. Lo bas liyado ad shemocher as bito. He's going to then sell his daughter as an amo ivria. Shneimar, as the Bible says, v'chiyim kor isha as bito la'amo, that a fellow sells his daughters in Amma Ivria. And even though, all the other psukim were kind of like subsequent psukim, even though, right, those psukim were, I think, in Vayikra. Now, even though this pasuk is a pasuk in Shmos, so it's in a completely different place, but still, what it's teaching us is, Nizbin inish barte v'lo neziv b'ribisa, that a person would first sell his daughter, we can assume, right, the next thing coming up is that he's gonna loan with interest, but, borrow with interest. But what it's saying is that a person would first sell his daughter as an Amma Ivria before taking out a loan with interest. My time outcome, Barte Migara Vinafka, because his daughter, right, if she wants to buy herself back, so then as she works more, then her the amount to buy her back becomes less and less. Whereas whereas interest becomes worse and worse and worse, and more severe and more expensive. Then, after selling his daughter, he's going to end up borrowing with interest. Shneimar, as the Bible says, that a fellow is going to become, very poor. And then it says, Al tikach meito v'gomer, right? Don't take interest from him. So we see that, it gets to interest. Then he's going to sell himself as an Eved Ivri. Shneimar, as the Bible says, that if a fellow becomes destitute and he sells himself to you, lo lach, not to you, el leger, but to a ger, shenemar leger, v'lo leger tzedek. We're not talking about a proselyte, el leger toshav, a Gentile ger who lives among you. Shenemar ger toshav mishpachas ger, but the Pasuk says the family of the ger zeh ovid kochavim. That's a ovid kochavim kshu omer le'eker, and the Pasuk says le'eker zeh nimkar le'avodas kochavim atzma. That's talking about somebody who sold to mamish serve the getchkes themselves. Now it doesn't mean to bow down to a getchke. That's a red line. But even to cut down trees, to be to give to the people for use for the getchkes. So things are really devolving over here. So we see that according to Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina, a person ends up becoming an Eved Ivri after sort of many averis and many steps. So therefore, I might think to be stringent and to say that when he when he's an Eved Ivri, he can he can eat the good stuff with his master, fine. But with regard to how much will it cost him to buy himself back, maybe we'll be stringent. And if he's appreciated to $200, so it should be $200, not $100. That's a suggestion. So Amar Lei Sabai says, look, Hasam ha'ahadre kra. Yeah, but the pasuk itself says the Tani Devei, right, with regard to the 200 versus 100, the pasuk says the Tani Devei Rabbi Shmuel Hoil b'halach zeh v'naisa komer la'avodas kochavim, that since this fellow went and became a galach for the getchkis, so emalidche even achar nofel. So I might say, don't redeem him, but throw a stone at the guy who's falling. We don't want anything to do with him. Tamulomar acharei nimkar gulati elo. That after he's sold, nonetheless, you redeem him. Echad me'echav yigalenu, one of his brethren will redeem him. Right? That even if a fellow goes and becomes a galach for the getchkis, still, you don't give up hope. You still redeem him. Ve'ema gula ti'elo, ki'echid lo litama bina ovdei kochavim. But maybe, look, we redeem him so that he won't become, spend too much time among the ovdei kochavim. But Indian pidyon, but in terms of how much money should it cost, nachmir alei. We should be stringent to say that it's 200, not 100. Because based on what Rabbi Chanina said, that he got himself into, he'd devolved more and more until he got into this situation. So maybe we have to be stringent. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak trei kroi ksive. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, look, it says two psukim by an Eved Ivri. Ksiv im od rabos bashonim. It says if there is more years. If there are less years. What do you mean? I thought that an Eved Ivri is always a 6-year stint. What, is there more than 6 years? Is there less than 6 years? Ela nisrabo kasbo mikesef miknaso. That if his value went up, so then it's mikesef miknaso, it's the lower value like at the time of the sale. Nismait kasbo, if his value went down, kifi shonov, so then it goes based on like it is now, the lower value. But maybe I'll say that what the pasuk is saying is, look, what it means, v'mat nisha bashanim, right, and mod rabos bashanim, maybe pasha means like the simple pshat. Heicha de avad trei ufashle dalid, that when an Eved Ivri has already worked for 2 years and there are 4 years left, nesim le dalid, so you give him so you redeem yourself for the amount of 4 years, mikesef miknoso, from the amount of the sale. If you already worked off 4 years and there's only 2 left, so then you just have to pay 2 years like the amount of time left. So imkain nichtov kra, if that was the so, if that was the case, so nichtov kra im od rabos shonim. Im od ma'at nishar shonim. My bashonim, what does it mean in the years? Nisraba kaspo bashonim mikasef miknaso, that if his over time his value went up, so then we use the lower value at the time of the sale. Nismaid kaspo bashonim, if his value went down over the years, kifi shonov, so then go based on it is now the lower value. Amar of Yosef says of Yosef darshinu Rav Nachman darshan these psukim to say that we go by the lower amount. Lahani kroi, he darshan these psukim kisinai, like they were given at Mount Sinai. He expounded them perfectly. I was wondering if Rav Yosef is called Sinai. I wonder if he was saying he expounded them just like I would, but I don't know, I'm not sure. The article didn't seem to say that, but I don't know, I was thinking maybe there could be an allusion over here. Man, this sun I think is pretty stark. Yeah, it's pretty stark. Can I go? That is stark. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to go back to sideways, even though it's super annoying. It says the Gemara, Ba mine Rav Huna bar Chinana me Rav Sheshes. Wow, sitting sideways is so not fun, but I mean, it's way better than having the sun freaking rocking you. Do that sun, man. All right, yeah, it's just better to just go weiter. Okay, where am I? Oh my gosh. So Ba mine Rav Huna bar Chinana me Rav Sheshes. So Rav Huna bar Chinana Pashit asks Rav Sheshes, Eved Ivri hanimkar lo Oved kechavim. So an Eved Ivri who's sold to an Oved Kechavim. Okay, so an Eved Ivri who's sold to an Oved Kechavim. Nigol achatzoin or no nigol achatzoin. Can he redeem himself 50% or not? Right? Kilu can. Oh wait, 1 second. Right? Can he give 50% of it? So, like for example, if he was, are we going to give an example? No. So let's say he was sold for $100 and he has $50. Can he immediately give his adon $50? and then at a later point he can give the other $50. Like, does it work like that? So where am I? So gulaso mistei achuza gamar. So do we say that we have a gzeir shava? It says gulaso by in Evid, Ivri, and it says gulaso when it comes to stei achuza. That was right. That meaning, if a fellow sells his ancestral lands, so if he wants, so he can buy back, so he could, at Yovel it reverts back, but if he wants to buy it back before then, right? I think it's talking about, yeah, exactly. So if he wants to buy it back before Yovel, he has to pay the full price. So maste achuza enu nigol la chatzoin. So just like by stei achuza, if he wants to buy it back, he can't buy it back for half. He has to pay the full price. So afainami enu nigol la chatzoin. So also when it comes to an Eved Ivri, he can't buy himself back. He can't redeem himself 50%. He would have to do all of it. O dilma likula amrinon. Or maybe we say that he could buy himself back 50% when it's lenient, but not when it's stringent. We're going to explain in a minute what that means. Amarle, so Rav Sheshes responds, Lav Amart Hasam, didn't you say earlier Nimkar Kula Velo Chetzio, that we said that if you have a fellow who's worth $1,000 and he steals $500, which would mean that he would only have to do a term of 3 years instead of 6 years to pay off the $500, we say no, he wouldn't be an Eved Ivri because we only sell him fully, not 50%. Hachanami Nigol Kula Velo Chetzio. So here Oichit in Eved Ivri, redeeming himself. He redeems himself in full, not in half. If you want to say that he can be redeemed 50%, so sometimes that could be, so the 50% can be lenient and the 50% can be stringent. So now we're going to explain the stringent and lenient, but I don't really understand. We're going to say this is the case of where we're lenient, and then we're going to say this is the case where we're stringent. But in both the lenient case and the stringent case, we give like two options, a lenient option and a stringent option. So I don't really get it in that sense, but okay. Likula, in terms of being lenient, so Zabne Bimeya, this first case I think is a lenient one, and then the second case, the first one is the stringent one maybe? I don't know. But Likula, Zabne Bimeya, so if he was purchased for 100, Yoav Lechamshin, and immediately he gave $50, which means he redeemed himself 50%. But he still has to redeem the other 50%. So Palga did May. He redeemed himself for 50% of his value. Ve'ashbach, but then he increased the value in value. But now he's worth 200. And remember, he still has 50% that he needs to redeem. So if you say, well, he can be redeemed for 50%, so that means that he's already redeemed 50% of himself. So all that's left is another 50%. So Yoav le Meya v'nofik. So remember, he was worth 100 at the time of the sale. He already redeemed 50% of his value with the $50 that he immediately paid. So there's only 50% left. Now we increased to 200. So the remaining 50% would be 100. So he pays another 100 and he goes free. But if you say that there's no such concept as redeeming 50%, so in the $50 that he initially paid aren't going to help him at all. It didn't redeem him 50%, didn't redeem him at all, because there's no such thing as redeeming 50%, which means that still, he's going to have to start all over. The 50% are not going to help him at all. If he's worth 200 now, he has to buy himself back for 200. So the 50 that he paid can contribute towards the 200, but he's going to have to, he still has a balance of 150, not 100. So if they may have a chamshin, he's got to give 150, and then he can go free. So if we're being lenient, so then we would say that Nigol Achatzoin would be lenient in this case. Oh, I guess in this case, Nigol Achatzoin, if you say Nigol Achatzoin, then it's lenient because, that's what it is. Then it's lenient because by saying Nigol Achatzoin, so then he already redeemed 50%, which means that then there's only another 50% remaining, which is you pay 100, and you paid 150. But one second, we just said that if he was sold for 100 and he increased in value to 200, now we're figuring out based on the fact that he's not 200. I thought we said that we always go by the lower price anyways. Well, could go into Okir, Vizal, Okir. No, so it's talking about a situation where he was initially worth 200 at the time of the sale. He then depreciated to 100, at which point he bought back 50% of himself, and then he appreciated once again to 200. So at the time of the sale, he was 200, and right now he's also 200. That's why we're working with 200. And we can also say that being Nigol Achatzoin would be stringent in the following case, Zabne bin Basin, if he was sold for 200, Yoiv Meya, and immediately he paid $100. So immediately he redeemed half of himself. I understand. And so in this case, if you say Nigol Achatzoyin, it would be stringent, because now if you say Nigol Achatzoyin, so he just redeemed half of himself at 200, but then he depreciated in value, v'kam al meya. Now he's only worth 100, and he still has to redeem 50%. So Yomar Goel Nigol Achatzoyin. So if you say Nigol Achatzoyin, it's actually a chumrah, because he already paid 50% at the higher rate, which was 100, and now he's worth 100, and he still needs to redeem 50% of himself, so he has to pay an additional $50. So he pays $50, and then he goes free. But if you say ein nigol achatzoyin, well then the 100 that he initially paid is irrelevant. Now he's worth 100, which means, and if he has to pay ein nigol achatzoyin, which means he has to pay the full price, which is the 100 that he already paid, so he doesn't have to pay anything. He can just go free at this point. The initial 100 that he gave weren't actually redeeming 50% of him. They were just like a collateral. What's the word that I'm thinking of? Deposit. So, he keeps the 100 and his entire value right now is 100 and that's that. It's 100 instead of 150. So we see, so that's what we say, that, if it's Nigol Achatzoyin, it could be, lenient or stringent. Okay, fine. I feel like I've been getting a little bit better with my vocabulary. Is that possible? Let's see if the sun sorted itself out yet. I hope it did. Yeah, I think it's manageable now. Okay, I don't like sitting sideways. Alright. Oh, this is better. Okay, so, where are we? Okay, we're doing alright. Okay, but here's the last chunk. Friends, we're going to get towards the end of the Amud, and then until the end, we're going to end the daf, we're going to do some, we're going to make some way, we're going to do about 15-20 lines on Chaf Aleph Mud Aleph. Once we get a few lines in the Chaf Aleph Mud Aleph, let's just, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't expect my brain to hold all that it's going to be expected to hold, but we'll kind of see what happens. Okay. Is it? There's music again? I don't know. Now Rav Huna Bar Chinna asks Rav Sheshes, so if a fellow sells a house in a walled city, Nigol Achatzoyin, can it be 50% redeemed or not? Okay, now there are a few concepts. Maybe let's go over these. There are 3 concepts that we have to go over. We mentioned the first one a few minutes ago, Stei Achuza, right? We've talked about ancestral lands before. When the Yidden went to Eretz Yisrael, so they divided up Eretz Yisrael, and then, the land stays in the family. Even if you sell it at the Jubilee year, it goes back. So if a fellow sells his ancestral land, so for the first 2 years, it cannot be redeemed. Cannot, off limits. First 2 years, you cannot redeem your ancestral land that you sold. After that, you can buy it back, and since the land goes back at the Jubilee year, so you basically calculate, initially that you calculate in the sale based on, the knowledge that it's going to revert in the Jubilee year. And then you figure out how much time is left until the Jubilee year, and you figure out how much is owed. That is Stei Achuza. The next thing is a Makdish Stei Achuza, which we've talked about in Masechta Gittin, we talked about recently as well, that if a fellow makes, donates his Stei Achuza, his ancestral lands, to the Beis HaMikdash, so he can redeem, he redeems it from the Beis HaMikdash, and that money goes to the temple treasury. But if he doesn't, what? Is that the Shabbos thing? Wait, when's Shabbos? 1 second. Well, friends, that is definitely the Shabbos buzzer. So I guess we're probably going to hold it here. That means I have to do this on Sunday. Well, I guess I'll have to do it on Sunday. Friends, I'll be back shortly. Alright, I'm back. It's now Sunday. Friends, here's the deal. I'm in a humongous rush. I got to get out of here. And we have to finish today's daf, Friday's daf, and we have to finish Friday's daf, and also we have to do today's daf after this. And again, I got like less than an hour. So and this is hard. So I mentioned yesterday, meaning today, meaning at the beginning of the daf, that the end of this daf is just ridiculous, and you have to have a bigger brain than mine, or at least put more time into understanding what's going on than I did. So I imagine at some point towards the end of this daf, I'm gonna lose my train of thought. But until then, let's see what we got. All right. So where are we? Okay. So on Daf Chaf Amud Beis. I don't have to say where we are because I have to figure out where we are, but you know exactly where we are because as far as you're concerned, there haven't been 2 days since 10 seconds ago. Okay. So I think where I left off, I was explaining that there are 3 situations that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Stei Achuza. Stei Achuza is be'etzem, when the Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael with Joshua, so they divided up the land among the people, and whatever property your family got, that's your family's property, and you keep it in the family, and comes the Jubilee year, and at the Jubilee year, if you sell that property, comes the Jubilee year, it reverts back to you. For the first 2 years after you sell that property, you cannot force the seller to sell it back to you. But after that, you can redeem it back, and the price of the sale is relative to how much time there is left until Yovel. And you could just, so after 2 years, you can kind of calculate how much time is left until Yovel and buy it back for the appropriate amount. That's what's called Stei Achuza. Now, there's also being Makdish Stei Achuza, right? We've learned, this has come up a few times, that what happens if you donate your ancestral property, your ancestral lands to the temple, so you buy it back, right? So you redeem it and you give the money to the temple. If you don't redeem it, so then the temple treasury sells it to somebody else, and then they at Yovel, it actually gets divided among the Kohanim. It doesn't go back to the original owners. But okay, there's the concept of somebody who is Makdish's Stei Achuza redeeming that Stei Achuza. And then the third example we're going to talk about is Batei Ari Choma, that a house in a walled city from the time of Yoshua ben Nun. So if you sell that, you have 1 year to buy it back. And within that year, you can go to the person who you sold it to and buy it back from him, and he can't say no. After that, it's that person's forever. It doesn't go back at Yovel. So now, those are 3 different cases. So now, Ba'amida Rav Huna bar Chinna of Sheshis. So Rav Huna bar Chinna asked of Sheshis, and Rav Huna bar Chinna has been asking of Sheshis a few things recently. He's going to ask this. He's going to ask another kasha on Chaf Aleph Mur Aleph. They're very involved kashas, I'd say. They're not I don't know what they are, but they're you really have to work through the answers to these kashas, which is sort of what's difficult about these dafs. So Rav Huna bar Chinna of Sheshis. So Rav Huna bar Chinna asks of Sheshis, Hamocher bayis bebotei arei choma. So if a fellow sells a house in a walled city, nigol lachatzoin or eno nigol lachatzoin, can you redeem it? Can you redeem back half of it, right? If you sell your house in a walled city and you have 1 year to redeem it, can you buy back half of it? So gulasu Stei Achuza gomar. So do we learn a gezer shava that it says gulaso by Stei Achuza and it says gulaso by Batei Ari Choma? So ma Stei Achuza eino nigeles lachatzoin, afainami eino nigol lachatzoin. So just like Stei Achuza, if you sell your Stei Achuza and now after 2 years you want to buy it back, you may not buy it back 50%, you have to buy it back 100%. So oichid by Batei Ari Choma, the same applies. You can only buy it back 100%, not 50%. Or perhaps Heichad Gali Gali, where the Torah says that you can only buy back 100%. So only in those cases do you have to buy back 100%. Heichad Lo Gali. But in a case like Batei Ari Choma, where it doesn't specifically say that you have to buy it back 100%, maybe you should be able to buy it back 50%. So Amar Lei, so Rav Sheshis responds, Mi midrashol shel Reb Shimon nishma shelo v'goel lachatzoin. So says Reb Shimon that we should be able to infer from the exposition of Reb Shimon that Batei Ari Choma should be able to be redeemed 50%. The Tanya is we learn in the Brayso im Gaol Yigal, that it says in the context of when you're makdish a field, right? The pasuk says Gaol Yigal es asode makdish also, right? So we talked about somebody who's makdish is Stei Achuza. So somebody who makes his stei achuza hektish, and we said he has to redeem it. So it says, Goel Yigol Melamid Shalova V'Goel V'Goel Lachatzayin. So it teaches that you can take out a loan in order to buy back your stei achuza that you're makdish. It's saying that you can buy it back, you can redeem it 50%. So now Amar Reb Shimon, and Reb Shimon explains why. An explanation, because Reb Shimon is Dorish time of the Dekra. Reb Shimon sort of looks, right, he gives explanations for why the pasuk teaches certain things, and he's explaining that the reason why the pasuk says that you can redeem a stei achuza at 50% is for the following logic, which is matam. How come lefisha matzinu b'mocher stei achuza? Because we find that by somebody who sells his stei achuza to somebody else, that sort of it's stronger it's strong in the sense that it has baked into it that by a stei achuza, if you sell it, if comes Yovel and you haven't yet redeemed it, so it reverts back to you. So sort of the seller is in a stronger position there by Yovel, but when it comes by Yovel, Hura Kocho, and we see that he has sort of a weaker position, that and by stei achuza, to redeem it, he cannot borrow money to redeem it, nor can he redeem it 50%. He has to use his own money to redeem it 100, the entire field. So we see that by a stei achuza, which sort of the seller is in a stronger position in that he gets it back at Yovel, and he's in a weaker position with regard that he cannot, right? Eino love v'goel ve'eino love lachatzoin. So now makdish, Reb Shimon now continues explaining the pasuk by somebody who makes his stei achuza hekdish, shehura kocho, that he is in a weaker position vis-a-vis Yovel, shemigia Yovel v'lo nigala, that if the Jubilee year comes and he has not yet redeemed it from hekdish, Yotze l'kayanim by Yovel, it goes to the priest at Yovel, it does not go back to him, so he's in a weaker position in that respect. So Yafe kocho, so the opposite is true in terms of redeeming, shelove v'goel lachatzoin, that he could borrow money and redeem it, and he can redeem it 50%. So basically, Reb Sheshes is saying that based on Reb Shimon's explanation of the psukim, that when it comes to stei achuza, where the seller is in a stronger position in that he automatically gets it back at the Jubilee year, he is in a weaker position vis-a-vis redeeming it before the Jubilee year, that eino love v'goel lachatzoin, he can't redeem 50%. So by somebody who's makdish is stei achuza, that he's in a weaker position vis-a-vis the Jubilee year, that it does not go back to him if he hasn't yet redeemed it. Vis-a-vis redeeming, however, he's in a stronger position that he can be goel lachatzoin. And now, the same would therefore follow by haimocher bayis bebati orichomo. So if we would apply this pattern to somebody who sells a house in bati orichomo, one second, nami, also, Hoil v'hura kocho she'im mal'a lo shana tamima v'lo nigala nechlot, that he is in a weaker position in that at the end of the year he has not yet redeemed his house, so then he never can, it does not go back to him at Yovel. Well, Yafe kocho, so I would say that his position is stronger, shelove v'goel lachatzoin, that he can borrow and redeem the house, and he can redeem it 50%, right? So basically, Rav Sheshes is saying that the Batei Arichoma are similar to when a fellow is makdish his stei achuza. Just like when he's makdish his stei achuza, it does not go back to him at Yovel, and he has the strong, right, and he can be love, he can be, right, love v'goel lachatzoin. So also, Batei Arichoma, which would not go back to him after at Yovel, meaning once a year has passed, it will never go back to him. So he's in a weaker position in that sense, but he's in a stronger position in terms of love v'goel lachatzoin eisvei. However, I guess Rav Huna Bar Chinna asks a kasha to Rav Sheshes. We have the following brisa that says, now we start getting into kal v'chomers, and these kal v'chomers they require a lot of memory. They take up a lot of memory, which sometimes causes a crash. Eisvei, im goal yigal, that, so it says by somebody who's makdish his field, im goal yigal, melamid, shelove v'goel lechatzoin. So we need the pasuk, so this is the Bryce. It says that we need the pasuk, it's going to be different than Reb Shimon's explanation just now, right? Reb Sheshes wanted to say that based on Reb Shimon's explanation, we should say that by Batei Arichoma, it should be Goel Love v'Goel lechatzoin. However, this brisa is going to say explicitly that actually by Batei Arichoma, Eino Love v'Goel ve'Eino Goel lechatzoin. So here's this brisa. So Eisvei Im Goel Yigal. So it says by when you're makdish your field. So I don't know what I just said, but this brisa is going to say that by Batei Arichoma, Eino Love v'Goel ve'Eino Goel lechatzoin. Fine. So now, Im Goel Yigal. So it says by somebody who's makdish a stei achuza. It says Im Goel Yigal Melamid Shelov v'Goel lechatzoin. The pasuk teaches us that you can redeem 50. You could borrow and redeem. You could redeem 50%. And I need a pasuk to teach me, because otherwise I would employ a kal v'chomer to argue the opposite, that by makdish stei achuza, so he should not be able to be love v'goel lachatzoin. Sheyachol, because I would have thought to say the following kal v'chomer, v'alo dinu uma mocher stei achuza sheyafe kocho shemigia yovel v'lo nigala chozeres levay le'aba yovel. That, well, if by a stei achuza that he's in a stronger position, in that comes the yovel, it goes back to him if he hasn't yet redeemed it, and yet and yet he is in a weaker position vis-a-vis redeeming his stei achuza, that he cannot be love v'goel lachatzoin. So then certainly I would have thought that makdish, when it comes to somebody who's makdish his stei achuza, shehura kocho, that he's in a weaker position, she'im igia yovel v'lo nigalo, that if Yovel comes and you have not yet redeemed it from Hektesh, Yotzet l'kirhanim by Yovel, it doesn't go back to him, rather it's divided among the priests, Einu din, Shehura kocho, She'ein love v'goel lachatzoin, then certainly I would have thought that he should be unable to be love v'goel lachatzoin. So therefore, we need the pasuk to teach me, im goel yigal, that love v'goel lachatzoin. This is where I start to lose my train of thought, but this isn't the hard part yet. Well, it's the next step, but ma lemocher stei achuza. But 1 second, you can't compare makdish stei achuza and mocher stei achuza, because I'll actually argue that mocher stei achuza shechein hura kocho ligoel miyad, that by stei achuza it's actually in a sense in a weaker position, in that you can't redeem it immediately. There's a 2-year sort of grace period that the seller cannot, force the buyer to sell it back to him. So Tomar b'makdish sheyafe koch ligol miyad. But when you're makdish your stei achuza, you can immediately redeem it, which puts actually stei achuza in a stronger position, which is why I can understand. Which puts makdish stei achuza in a stronger position, which is why I can argue that it would make sense actually that goel love v'goel lachatzoin. To which the Gemara says, no, but don't ask that, because mocher bayis b'batei arichoma yochiach, because after all, somebody who sells a house in a walled city, sheyafe koch ligoel miyad, you can redeem it immediately, and yet ve'ein lo v'goel lachatzoin, and yet ein lo v'goel lachatzoin. So that's essentially the question, right there at the end, right? So meaning, so in this brisa we said that we have a pasuk that says that when a fellow is makdish stei achuza, so it says v'im goel yigal, to teach that when you're makdish your stei achuza, you can be lo v'goel lachatzoin, that you can redeem it 50%. We have a pasuk to teach me that. The brisa says, because otherwise I may have thought from a kal v'chomer that you shouldn't be able to be lo v'goel lachatzoin when it comes to makdish stei achuza. Therefore, we have the pasuk to teach that you can be lo v'goel lachatzoin. To which the Gemara says, wait, but that kal v'chomer that you asked wasn't even a good kal v'chomer, because it makes sense that by stei achuza, regular stei achuza, you cannot be lo v'goel lachatzoin, because after all, it's in a weaker position in that you can't redeem it immediately. You have to wait 2 years. Whereas by makdish de'achuza, you can redeem it immediately, which puts it in a stronger position. And now it would make sense, therefore, that by makdish de'achuza, you should be able to be lo v'goel lachatzoin. To which the Gemara throws that out, however, because after all, you have mocher bias right by Batei Orichoma, that when you sell a house in a Batei Orichoma, that when you sell a house in a walled city, you can redeem it immediately for the first year. Up until the first year, you can redeem it immediately. And yet, Eino Love V'goel Lachatzoin. So we see a Brisa saying that by Batei Orichoma, Eino Love V'goel Lachatzoin. So that's the kasha on Rav Sheshis. Because Rav Sheshis wanted to say, based on Rav Shimon's explanation, that by Batei Orichoma, Love V'goel Lachatzoin. Yet here we have a Brisa that says that by Batei Orichoma, Eino Love V'goel lachatzoin lo kasha, to which the Gemara says it's not a question. Harabonon ha Reb Shimon. To which the Gemara says lo kasha, it's no question. Harabonon ha Reb Shimon. Okay. Whoa, sorry, I got distracted. Lo kasha harabonon ha Reb Shimon. It's no problem. Remember, Rav Sheshis had said that based on Reb Shimon, we would say that by Batei Orichoma lo v'goel lachatzoin. This Brisa that says by Batei Orichoma eino lo v'goel lachatzoin, that is the Rabbanon. Tani Chada lo v'goel lachatzoin. One Brisa says that by Batei Orichoma lo v'goel lachatzoin. V'tani idach, we have another Brisa that says by Batei Orichoma ein lo v'goel lachatzoin. Lo kasha, again, harabonon harib Shimon. The first Brisa that says lo v'goel lachatzoin is Reb Shimon. The second Brisa that says ein lo v'goel lachatzoin is the rabbis. Now this is where my brain starts to not start. Where basically we start to have a crash. My brain switches from like a Mac to like a PC, and it starts crashing. Sorry if I offended anybody. Just forget I said that. Oh, I don't want to create a whole tumult in WhatsApp. Forget I said that. Okay. But that's my brain crashes. So just assume that for the rest of the daf, I'm working with the crashed brain, okay? So now. So Rav Acha says to Rav Ashi, but you can ask a kasha on that kal v'chomer that we just had. Malamocher bayis b'batei orichoma, that when it comes to mocher bayis b'batei orichoma, shekein hura kocho ligar le'olam, that when it comes to selling a house in a batei orichoma, so it's in a weaker position. In that, meaning we had said that it's in a stronger position and that you can redeem it immediately, and yet ein lo v'goel lachatzoin. But if you think about it, when you sell a house in a batei orichoma, it's in a weaker position inherently because because after a year you can never redeem it. So the seller's in a pretty weak position vis-a-vis that. Right? I mean, you have 1 year to redeem it. After that, you lost it. Tomar b'm makdish. Are you going to really compare that to being makdish a house? Makdish shtei achuza sheyafe kocho ligoel leolam. That when you makdish a shtei achuza, you can redeem it until yovel at any time. Some of the Rav Acha Sov the Rav Ashi says Rav Acha Sov the Rav Ashi mishum deika lememer nihader dina. Well, we could say that it goes back to the original kal v'chomer. This is where my brain crashes, because we have so many layers of kal v'chomer now. We had the original kal v'chomer, we had a kasha on the kal v'chomer, we had a kasha on the kasha of kal v'chomer. Now we're asking a kasha on the kasha of the kal v'chomer, and saying that we're going back to the kal v'chomer. Which kal v'chomer? That's where my brain kind of crashes. Okay, but teisi b'ma'atzad, but we should be able to learn it. What's it? I don't know. It. From the commonalities between them. Mocher sdei achuza yochiach. Okay, so let's learn it out from mocher. Let's learn it out from mocher sdei achuza. Somebody who sells his property, his ancestral property. Yochiach sheyafe kocho, that it's stronger. Ligar leolam, in that you can always get it back, right? Even at yovel, it reverts. Ve'ein lo v'goel lachatzoin, and yet you cannot borrow and redeem 50%. But malamocher stei achuza. But when it comes to mocher stei achuza, sheken hura kocho the goel miyad. It's got a weak position there in that you can't redeem it immediately. You have to wait 2 years. Okay. But let's learn it out from selling a house in a bate orichoma, because you can redeem it immediately. However, the thing is, it's weaker in the sense that after a year you've lost your chance. But then you're going to say, yeah, but it's weaker in that, after a year you lost your chance. So each one's got its own sort of issue, right? Stei achuzah's got its issue because you have to wait 2 years before you can redeem it. Bate orichoma's got its issues because after a year you can never redeem it anymore. But what the commonality is shenigalin, that in both cases they can be revealed, right? When you sell your stei achuzah, not revealed, redeemed. When you sell your stei achuzah, you can redeem it. When you sell your bate orichoma, you can redeem it for a year. And also, you can't be love v'goel, and you can't be goel lachatzoin. So af ani avi makdish. So therefore, I will also say, I would have thought to say that when it comes to when you're makdish stei achuzaso shenigal. What? Af ani avi makdish shenigal ve'ein love v'goel lachatzoin. Exactly. That also by makdish it shouldn't be love v'goel lachatzoin, and that's why you need the pasuk by makdish stei achuzah to say that yes, love v'goel lachatzoin. Amar mazuch brei Rav Mari Ravina ikele mifrach. But you can ask, but mala tzad hashove sheboin. But in terms of the tzad hashove by stei achuzah and by mocher stei achuzah and by bate orichoma, sheken hura kocham ligoel bashana shniya. That when it comes to makdish stei achuzah and when it comes to bate orichoma, in both cases when it comes to mocher stei achuzah and when it comes to mocher bate orichoma, in both cases you cannot redeem it in the second year, right? Because mocher stei achuzah for the first 2 years you can't redeem it. When it comes to bate orichoma, you only have 1 year to redeem it. So of course in the second year you can't redeem it. Tomer b'makdish, how can you compare that to makdish stei achuzah sheyafe kocho ligoel bashana shniya, that you can redeem it in the second year, right? Makdish stei achuzah you could redeem it anytime until Yovel. So I'm the Ravina mishum dikil meimar, because you could say Eved Ivri hanimkar loved kochavim yochiach. Well then, yeah, but you can learn that from Eved Ivri hanimkar loved kochavim sheyafa kochu ligoel bashana shniya, that he can be redeemed in the second year. Ve'ein loved v'goel lachatzoin, and yet ein loved v'goel lachatzoin, and therefore you need the pasuk of im gol yigal to teach that by makdish stei achuzah you can be love v'goel lachatzoin. I think maybe I probably missed something in like a few lines, but I think for the most part it was actually okay. Be'etzim, it was explaining why we need the pasuk of im gol yigal by makdish stei achuzah also to say that it could be love v'goel lachatzoin, and we don't learn out by any kind of kavol chomer or tzad hashove to say that you can not be love v'goel lachatzoin. Okay, friends, that was the chaf of Masechta Kiddushin. I gotta run because I have to now record another daf and I'm in a huge rush. Peace out.